we're in this sermon series, and I'll get into that in just a second. But I just wanted to start, like if you go all the way back to the beginning, and God's creating stuff, and he's just speaking it into existence, and he's saying light, and he's saying moon, and he's saying trees, and waterfalls, and mountains. And every time he does something, it creates a new element of creation. In the text in Genesis 1, he was like, light, oh man, that light, that's good. Mountains, boy, that's really good. Valleys, that's good. Beaches, that's good. He keeps declaring things are good every time he creates them. So God's not hesitant to be impressed at his own creation. He's, like kids do when they draw you something for Mother's Day and they're like, do you like it? Because they're proud of it. You don't know what it is, but you've got to figure it out kind of on the fly. But of course you like it. It's good. It's very good. God steps back and he takes all of creation in, and he says at the end of Genesis chapter 1, he says, this is very good. This is all amazing. I have done incredible work here. And then he looks at man, and for the very first time in the creation story, he says something about this is not good. And it's in Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. The Lord God said, this is the first time something was not good. Everything had been awesome up to this point. The Lord God said, it is not good for a man to be alone, for the man to be alone. It's not good. Have you ever been driving on the highway and you drive by an accident and you're like, oof, that's not good. Ugh. Have you ever gone into your basement, you heard a little water and you're like, that doesn't sound right, and you go downstairs and you find out that your washing machine is leaking and there's an inch of water around your basement? Like, oof, that's definitely not good. Have you ever opened up your heating bill in the winter and looked at it and you're like, that is really not good? What is happening? This not good concept, the first time that God talks about it, he talks about it in regard to human relationships. And the takeaway is pretty simple, is that belonging, for humans to belong, is one of the greatest human needs. It's one of the greatest human needs that we have, to feel that sense of belonging, to feel like there's somebody out there who has our back, who's in our corner, who's supporting us, to feel like there's a group of which we're a part. It's one of the greatest, deepest human needs, which means that loneliness is one of the greatest human hurts. It is painful to be alone. It is not good to be alone, which means that isolation is one of the greatest human threats. That when we are alone, whether we recognize it or not, or whether we relabel it as self-reliance or something else because we're telling ourselves how to deal with the pain, whatever it is, it's one of the greatest human problems. It's one of the greatest human threats. Now, I know that a lot of people feel like, well, my mom loves me, and I feel that too. My mom loves me. I'm very happy that she still thinks I do a good job. She thinks I'm a good preacher, and she tells me that a lot, and it's just like I sometimes feel like that kid with that drawing that nobody can tell what it is, and you've got that mom that's saying, "We're a good job." Even if I didn't do a good job, my mom has never once ever told me, that was a terrible sermon. That was really bad. You should consider a new career path. She's never done that, and I'm grateful for that. Because if nothing else, I've got my mom in my corner. I think I've mentioned, this is going to feel like a hard left turn, but it's important. I think I've mentioned that when my parents lived in Vermont, they lived right next door to a cult. Now, some of you are like, oh, was it just kind of a hardcore fundamentalist church? No. They made an HBO documentary about this group. It is a cult, C-U-L-T, cult. In this particular town, there were little, communities of this cult. And so one of the things that they would do is they would, in the towns that they existed in, they would have like a little bakery, a little lunch, a little restaurant kind of deli place that was really popular. I mean, you got to hand it to them. I mean, if nothing else, people who are in a cult can make good food. It was good food. And it was pretty inexpensive. And I think it's probably the forced labor that kept labor costs down. But you would go to this little deli and you would eat this cult food, and it was pretty good. I don't know if we should have been partaking, but we did. I don't know. Times are tough. Economy's hard right now. One time when we were in there, I was visiting my parents, and we were in there, and one of the members of the cult, I mean, you could tell who they were because they definitely looked like they came right out of the Old Testament, long beards for the guys, long hair. They would all change their names, which is a feature of a cult. You would, if your name was Bob, all of a sudden it was Hezekiah or something like that. It's, you know how cults are, right? We were in this place, and one of the members of the cult, and I don't remember the exact dynamics of how this happened, but he came up to our table and he kind of looked at me, zeroed in on me a little bit, and he said, "Hey, would you like a tour behind the scenes of the shop here?" And me, being young and naive and friendly, was like, "Sure, yeah, let's do it." So he separated me from my family and showed me around this like bakery. And I mean, he was super friendly. And again, another thing you got to hand to cults, they're very friendly at the very beginning. And so we're wandering around, checking everything out. And about halfway through this tour, I realized, I'm not actually getting a tour. I'm getting recruited. That's what's happening here. And it definitely changed the situation. I went from thinking, man, this guy's super friendly, to thinking, this is kind of a threat. I have to be on my guard a little bit here. And I remember saying, well, I really should get back to my family. Let me just show you I really should get back to everybody else. Let me just show you this other thing. And I realized, there's kind of a weird, I'm not in danger, but there's a weird sort of danger here. And I think if you look at the most vulnerable people, that's what is appealing about a cult. Is they're lonely and they're isolated, and people know that. I don't know if I looked lonely in that moment, but people know that. Belonging is one of the greatest human needs, and loneliness is one of the greatest human hurts, and isolation is one of the greatest human threats. There's a version, like I said, of self-imposed loneliness that we tell ourselves is self-reliance, and that's going to be a point of discussion next week. There's like a toxic self-reliance that I think we've been indoctrinated with in our culture, that we tell ourselves we have to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps, and that we can't seek help, and that we can't look to other people, and we can't rely on others, because if we rely on others, we're being too needy, and there's something completely wrong about that, and we end up being isolated and lonely anyway. But that's for another sermon. We're in a series called Did God Really Say That? Did God really say that? And the point, we're talking about spiritual cognitive distortions. These are ideas, half-truths, sometimes outright lies that are in our own heads, that are our own brains are articulating, and we are believing, and we have to come to terms with the fact that we don't have to believe everything that we think. We don't have to agree with every thought that comes into our head. Just because it's up here doesn't mean it's right or doesn't mean that it's true. And one of the original cognitive distortions was a way to get Adam and Eve separated from God. It's from the very beginning. Adam and Eve are living the dream. They're in a clothing optional paradise. I mean, they are walking and talking with God in the cool of the day. This is ideal. They can pluck food off of any tree in the garden that they want, except one. I mean, there's apples and oranges and pomegranates and mangoes and bananas, except there's this one tree. And nobody knows what the fruit is. I know we've decided that it's apple, and it has something to do with the Latin translation of the Bible, but it wasn't an apple. I don't know, it could have, who knows? People have speculated throughout history that it was a tomato, which I found out tomato was a fruit. We don't know. But they had all these options, and the serpent slithers up, and some of you are like, wait, what about the talking snake? We could talk about that some other time. The serpent slithers up, and he sews in this lie to undermine the relationship that Adam and Eve had with God. Am I hearing right? God said you can't eat of any of the fruit of any of the trees? Well, that wasn't true. But it began to undermine the character of God. And Adam and Eve began to question God's intentions. Like, wait a second, what is God withholding from us? Why is God hiding off that one tree? What is going on there? And it began to sow seeds of separation. God is trying to keep something from you. And it's these innocent statements. It's just a question. Did God really say? It's just a question. It's an innocent statement that sort of ruins everything. Have you ever had these said to you? The innocent statement that ruins everything? Here are some perfectly innocent things that you can use to ruin someone's day. Go ahead and write these down in your notes. How about this? Sometimes it's the emphasis. At work, you can use this tomorrow at work. Hey, I just wanted you to know that I think you're doing a good job. Super innocent. You gave him a compliment. Or how about this? How about this one? This is a compliment. Oh, man, you and your spouse look like you're doing okay now. Wait a second, we're what? Hey, what? Or how about this is always a fun one. Oh, I had a rough night last night. That's a good one to say at church on Sunday morning. The goal is to undermine Adam and Eve's confidence in the character of God. What are his intentions? What are his words? What is his will? Maybe God isn't good. And separation from the beginning has always been the strategy. It's always been about isolation because when you're isolated, you're vulnerable. Now, we start thinking things like, well, maybe God isn't good, but the thing that really gets into our brain that isolates us from other humans that care about us is this distortion, and we would never say it this way because this feels too childish, but it sums up the distortion that sometimes gets in our brains, and it's this idea that nobody really likes me. Nobody really likes me. Again, we would never say it like that because that sounds like something a little kid would say. Remember the story I told you a couple weeks ago about me and my dog, Sugar Baby? And I was petting Sugar Baby, and I'm like, oh, nobody loves me but you, Sugar Baby. And then she jumped off the bed and ran out the door, and then really nobody loved me. The distortions sound more like this. Nobody really notices me. Nobody really notices me. Especially, sometimes this happens at church. Nobody notices if I'm not at church for a couple weeks. I guess I don't really matter. It just doesn't really matter if I'm there or not. Or the distortion sounds like, I'm so needy, everybody must think I'm annoying. They're gonna not like me if they know that I need help. And I can't ask for help because people will think I'm incompetent. That I don't know how, I'm supposed to be an adult and I'm supposed to be like successful at life and I have to ask for help. It means that I don't know what I'm doing. Or how about this? I'm here, they only invited me, but they felt bad for me and I don't want anybody's pity. That's the only reason they invited me to this thing, this party, whatever it is. That's the only reason they invited me to church. Or how about if they really knew me? This is how you can be lonely in a crowd. If they really knew me, if they really knew who I was, they wouldn't like me. And then some people isolate themselves by thinking thoughts like, well, I would rather feel lonely than get rejected. I'd rather feel lonely than have someone tell me I'm not good enough to be around them. Now, we've likely all felt that, right? It doesn't matter where you are on the introvert-extrovert spectrum. You've all felt things like that. And by the way, loneliness is not the same thing as being alone. I hope you understand that. I think we all understand that. You can be lonely in a group. You've experienced that. And then you can be fully present even by yourself. You don't have to be lonely just because you're by yourself. There's times where it's good to spend some time. I think maybe we would call it solitude instead of isolation. But we've all felt that sense of loneliness. We've all felt variations of these kinds of thoughts, right? Have you ever been in a conversation with a group of people kind of making small talk and you share an anecdote and you start speaking and about maybe halfway through your second or third sentence you realize that nobody's actually listening to you, that they've started having side conversations and you just trail off and stop talking and it doesn't matter because nobody was listening to you anyway? Oh, just me? Okay, well, thank you. I was trying to be vulnerable here, but nobody supported me. Have you ever been watching a TV show about friends called Friends and then you realize you don't have any friends? Why don't I have 5 other people that also don't have jobs and can afford a lavishly expensive apartment in Manhattan and we can just sit around all day in our apartment or at the coffee shop downstairs? Why don't I have that? Super realistic. Have you ever thought, man, I wonder if I didn't stay in touch with this person, if I didn't make the effort, if I didn't text, if I didn't call, if I didn't send them a note or a letter here and there, would it matter to them at all? Is this reciprocated, or am I the only one carrying this relationship forward? Have you ever been in a situation where you're kind of feeling lost? You just weren't sure what to do. And you felt bad about not being sure what to do, and you're like, man, I wish I had someone I could ask, but you realize you don't have anyone in your life that you can pose this dilemma that you're facing with, this struggle that you're facing with. You don't have anybody to confess a sin or a weakness to. Have you ever felt like that? I think we've all felt like that. That's the truth. Jenny Allen wrote a book years ago called You're Not Alone in Being Alone. It's a common human experience. And even if you think like, well, yeah, but I'm especially alone, I'm sorry to break it to you. It's a common human experience. But I see other people that have friends or other people that have families, or at least it's a common human experience. And it doesn't matter if you have friends. It doesn't matter if you have families. That sense of isolation can exist regardless of those circumstances. And in fact, the thing that people don't talk about, and I don't know that I've ever heard articulated, but it is true, that loneliness feels embarrassing. It's embarrassing to be like, I'm alone. Here I am. I should be a competent human being. I mean, I could make kids easy when I was little. What happened? Now I'm an adult and I don't have any friends, and it's embarrassing to have to admit that you're lonely. There was a psychologist who teaches at Harvard, and he was talking about this very topic of the fact that loneliness feels embarrassing. And he writes that loneliness is a basic human need, just like being thirsty or being hungry. And none of us are ever like, man, I'm so embarrassed to have to admit, but I'm thirsty and I need hydration. He was like, why do we feel embarrassed about admitting that this basic human need that everybody experiences is somehow embarrassing to us? We shouldn't feel that way, and it's so hard not to feel that way. But even sometimes, things the Bible says plays into that, or at least how we read them depending on how we're feeling. For example, Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12. This was a passage read in a wedding ceremony I officiated yesterday, but it's not just about weddings, it's not just about marriage, it's about everybody. In Ephesians chapter 4, starting at verse 9, he writes, 2 are better than 1. He just comes out and says it. Here's the equation. 2 is better. Well, what about 1? No. 2 is better. 2 is the way you want to go, at least, maybe more, right? 2 are better than 1. Why? They have a good return for their labor. 2 people can lift more than 1 person could lift twice. Did you know that? It's pretty wild to think about. He says if one of them falls down, the other can help the other up. But pity, oh, how sad, is the person who falls down and has no one to help me up. I have to use the lifeline thing, hanging around my neck because there's nobody there. How sad, how lonely. Also, if 2 lie down together, well, they'll keep warm. But how can 1 keep warm alone? They can't. And if you're feeling lonely, reading verses like this, you're like, oh, I am a little cold. What am I going to do if I fall down? He says in verse 12, though 1 may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. And he ends by saying a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. These relationships matter. But even knowing that, even believing that, when you read verses like this, sometimes it makes you feel worse because you're like, well, great. I don't want to be isolated, so what do I do about it? You can tell me it's good all day long, but what am I supposed to do? But let me give you let's lean into this just a little bit more, because when God said that it's not good, he wasn't kidding. It's really not good. In fact, it's wild to me that I was doing a little research this week, and it's wild to me that unrelated to Scripture, unrelated to theology, the public health data about isolation and loneliness is pretty wild. It's this health epidemic. In fact, there's all these infographics I have here on the next slide that all cities, counties, governments will publish saying, hey, here's the dangers of loneliness. Make sure you're not lonely because it can cause all these health problems. For example, listen to this. Loneliness is related to significantly increased risk of heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and dementia. It has, this I quote, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know this. It has the same health effect as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So if you're a smoker and you're lonely, whew, and maybe you're lonely because you're a smoker, I don't know. The Harvard School of Public Health said that loneliness increases a person's risk for premature death by almost 30%. 30%. It's really not good for a man to be alone or a woman to be alone. But more than that, it intensifies. Loneliness is an intensifier because it's an experience that makes the experience of other things worse. It makes emotional and mental pain worse. You know how hospitals use that scale of pain? If you go into the ER and there's the face and it's like an angry red face and then a smiley green face, and where are you on the scale of pain? I think hospitals and doctors have been doing a better job. I know when I've taken my kids in for appointments and checkups, they'll ask kids about how's your mental well-being, do you feel isolated, things like that. They're doing a better job because they're pointing out how dangerous it is for loneliness to exist on top of other health problems. And it's intertwined with so many other mental challenges. And I think it's important to note that it amplifies these experiences. And it's awful to deal with things like depression and anxiety, but it makes it worse when you're dealing with those things and you're isolated. It's like I don't know, is there an opposite of anesthesia? That's something that makes the pain worse? Well, loneliness for sure. And the other thing I think that it's important to know as we lean into the dangers of loneliness, and I know everybody in the room is like, yes, we get it, but I just want to really emphasize, it's insidious. I was trying to think of a better word, a more commonly used word, but this is the best one. Loneliness is insidious because I think it's like a parasite or a cancer, and it worms its way into our brain, and it ruins so much of what we're thinking, so much healthy thinking. It's like this vicious, self-amplifying feedback loop. Think about those distortions I showed you earlier. Nobody really notices when I'm not at church. Nobody notices. That's not true. You know who notices? You can ask any of the staff members. Patrick notices when you're not at church. You know why he doesn't ask you where you are every week when you're not here? Because evidently that's not socially acceptable, I've been told. But I notice. I do notice. Do you guys know that my mom keeps attendance data? Did you notice? She's real subtle about it. I've told her, can you just keep it on the down low? And she stands at the door and says, oh, the Smith family, you're all here. Okay, wonderful. I'm like, that's the opposite of subtle, Mom. But my mom notices. Nobody notices me. Your mom notices you. Your mom thinks you're cool. Well, that doesn't count. Yeah, it does. It counts. People think things like, I'm so needy. Everyone must think I'm annoying. Well, you don't know what people are thinking. You don't know. I can't ask for help. People will think I'm incompetent. Well, what's the net result there? You don't get help. And actually, you discourage other people from asking for help too, because we all do need help. When you're at something that you've been invited to, but you're dealing with that echo chamber of loneliness, and you think the thought, oh, they only invited me out of pity, out of obligation. Well, see, that's how we ruin being together with people who care about you, and we tell ourselves that it doesn't matter because I'm only invited because they felt bad for me. Well, maybe they did, but you're still with people. You're still with people. If they really knew me, they wouldn't like me. That's not true. That's a common human thought. We all think that. We all struggle with that. People would like you even if they knew you. And you're like, no. You don't know some of the deep, dark secrets in my life. You haven't done anything worse than most of the people in the room. And if you're thinking, well, yeah, but I'm a serial killer and I've murdered lots of people. All right, maybe that's an exception. But for most people, all those things are common. They exist commonly. That those dark thoughts that you think nobody else ever thinks, they exist. Other people feel them. So what happens is we think these thoughts, nobody really cares about me, so we stop showing up to places where people could care about us. And we stop reaching out to people that do care about us. And then people think, oh, they probably just want space. And then that confirms your distortion. See, nobody cares about me. And they're just trying to give you a little space and let you be a human and figure things out. And it just makes this thing worse and worse. It's a vicious cycle. And the worst part about it is this is something that we do to ourselves. We do this to ourselves. We make choices to further isolate ourselves from community or even the potential for community. The last thing I'll say about the negative effects of loneliness is this. I think we need to think about loneliness like that cult member that separated me from my family and gave me a tour. We should be suspicious of anything going on that is separating us from other humans, especially church. When you think the thought, nobody will miss me if I'm not at church, that's a distortion that is getting into your head and removing you from helpful, healthy community. It's removing you from people that love you and care about you. I think it's the enemy's most effective isolation strategy. Here's how you know isolation is bad. You ready? This is how you know. When a person goes to prison, they separate them from the rest of society. That's the point of prison. You're separated from the rest of society. When you're in prison and you do something bad, what is the one punishment short of death separating you from life? What's the one punishment short of death that they have to enact on you? Isolation. That's how you know it's bad, because they're saying this is the worst thing we can do to another human being short of killing them is to separate them from everybody. Solitary confinement. And we do it to ourselves in our own homes. In our own brains. We're prisoners of our own thoughts. Be so cautious and suspicious of decisions that lead to isolation. Let me show you this verse. I think it's important. It's a verse that's taught as if it's about church attendance, and it's not. And so people sometimes dismiss it or abuse it. But it's Hebrews chapter 10, verse 25. It's about isolating ourselves. And it's in the context of persevering in one's faith. Hebrews 10:25, he writes this: don't give up meeting together. Make sure you spend time with one another. Man, some have developed this bad habit of not being with one another. And this bad habit of not being with one another and not being able to encourage one another is going to kill them. So be together, encourage one another all the more as you see the day approaching. Beware of isolation. Beware of solitude that can harm you. Beware of loneliness. It can hurt you. And it's funny to me that all this loneliness can cause all this destruction and all this damage in our lives, and we're more concerned with, ultra-processed foods. I mean, that's bad, sure, but man, people are killing themselves with isolation, and they're feeling good about it because they have a Brita water filter, so they don't have any PFAs in their water. That's great. You can do that, but also find friends, find community. And some of you are like, I want to. How do I do that? What do we do about it? Nobody wants to feel lonely. I've never met a person who's like, you know what? That's not true. I was going to say I've never met them, but you read stories all the time of people who are like, I'm done with society, and then they just leave and go into the woods in Alaska and live by themselves for 20 years. And some of you are like, and probably including my wife, are thinking, that actually sounds kind of good. That actually sounds pretty good. I don't think those guys are doing great. What happens when they get a toothache? And you're alone 500 miles from the nearest painkiller. Not good. What do we do about it? Nobody really wants to feel lonely. Even introverts don't want to feel lonely. They just feel awkward with people. Nobody wants to feel lonely, or they rejuvenate themselves with people, I should say. So the infographics I showed you earlier are kind of funny because they all say some version of, here's the solution to loneliness. They say this. You ready for this? This is the wisdom that our healthcare dollars are going through in terms of infographics. They're like, find more friends. That's very helpful. Thank you. I hadn't considered that. That's a great idea. It's so easy, right? Here's the thing, and I'm going to say this, and it's going to seem a little surprising, and you're going to push back and not like it at first. But here's the amazing thing about the power of loneliness, is that it's actually fairly simple to break. I know some of you are like, I've been lonely my whole life, and now you're telling me it's easy to break. Well, hold on a second. Just give me a moment to make my case here. Because remember, isolation and loneliness are the result of cognitive distortions, meaning our thinking has gone awry in some way that is limiting us from engaging in community. When Jesus said, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free, I think this is a lot of what he was talking about. The thoughts that you think that are holding you prisoner that actually prevent you from making decisions that would benefit you and your health and your mental health. Jesus said the most important thing you can do is to love God and neighbor. He presented it as one commandment. We sometimes distinguish it as two, but really the language of how he spoke it, it's one commandment, to love God and love neighbor. And I have often wondered if God says, I want you to express your love for me by loving people. So this is the greatest command that we have, to love God and neighbor. And as he's telling this, as he's giving this crowd of people wisdom from on high, from the ages, the secret to life, the secret to happiness, and he says you need to love God and neighbor, what is the first thing humans say in response to that? Who's my neighbor? Who do I have to love? And he was trying to justify himself. Now, he's trying to get off on a technicality, but I think some of us really do struggle with that question. Like, well, who is my community? Who are the people that I'm supposed to be around? Who is my neighbor? I was, just a couple weeks ago, I was turning left out of a parking lot onto a busy road right here in Woodbury, turning left. Now, I had scanned the road to my left, it was clear, scanned right, it was clear, and then I went. I should have scanned left again because there was this car going about 100 miles an hour. He was probably going slightly over the speed limit, but not crazy. And the road curved enough that I just didn't see him. And he was flying. And so I had to make a decision. I'm in the middle of oncoming traffic, and I had to decide, do I try to hit the gas and get past this guy, or do I hit the brakes and I'm kind of halfway in traffic, but he can go around me. And so I don't know what the right decision is, but I hit the brakes. And then this guy hit the brakes too. So we're both stopped in traffic. Now, my window was down because it was a nice day. And I'm a nice guy. So I was like trying to communicate from my car to his car. I'm so sorry, man. I didn't see you coming. And there's just a lot to communicate when he's like 50 feet away in a car with tinted windows and his windows are rolled up. But he rolled the windows down and he just shared some really loving, kind phrases with me that he had learned from watching too much TV. And as he was yelling these bad words at me, it dawned on me. This guy is my neighbor. I don't mean that in this theoretical everybody's your neighbor sense. This guy lives up the street from me. He's my actual neighbor. He lives far enough up the street that I don't think he recognized me, and I drive a pretty nondescript car, except for the rust, you really can't tell that anything unique about it. He drives a really flashy, hot pink car with a blue, front fender. It doesn't look good. It's a really terrible looking car, but it looks like it cost him a lot of time and energy to make it look this way. So I'm sitting in my car, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. And he's yelling mean words, and it clicks. Oh, this is my neighbor. It's about 5-10 houses up the road. And you guys are going to love this. This is what I said to him as he's yelling at me. I'm like, hey, you're my neighbor. He went quiet. And I don't know if he's surprised or shocked. I'm not sure he could hear me. But I did learn that is an excellent way to diffuse any situation. Because people don't know what to do. We are neighbors. And then a couple days later, I was driving home, and I'm like, oh, yep, there's this car. Should I go up to the house and be like, hey, that was me that almost killed you the other day. We should get to know one another on a first-name basis if I'm going to accidentally send you to the hospital. It definitely totally changes the dynamic. Who's my neighbor? Who's my neighbor? Let me offer you just 3 quick pieces of advice as we wrap up here. Who's your neighbor? Number 1, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Even if he hadn't lived up the street from me, he's still my neighbor. He's still my neighbor, and I'm still his neighbor. Don't overthink it. Who was your best friend when you were a kid? Maybe 4th grade, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. Shout out a name. Bobby, Steve. Was it this Steve? That would be wild. You guys know, many of you know, most of you have, you can kind of recollect a person that you would consider a best friend, right? And I think guys are a little different. Guys have a best friend, and a lot of girls tend to call a lot of people, oh, this is my best friend, this is my best friend, this is my best friend. And I was under the impression we could have one. There was one category, but a lot of people think you can have lots of them, which is great too. I think it's fine for everybody. Why were they your best friend? Why was Bobby, Steve, why were they your best friend? You can shout it out. They understood you? What? Time. You see them all the time? Yeah? He owned Dairy Queen. He owned a Dairy Queen. Hey, buddy, we should get to know one another here. My best friend growing up was Grady, and he lived across the street from us. You know why he was my best friend? Because he was similar in age and height, and he lived in proximity to me. That was it. I didn't have to go to Grady and say, hey, tell me about your thoughts about politics, and just want to make sure we agree on all of that here. I didn't have to go to him and say, I just want to know what your philosophy on life is and just how you're thinking about how the world should be. It was just like, there is another human being, and let's play together. And we were best friends. We were best friends to the degree that when Grady got in trouble, he got grounded from me. Because I just now thought maybe it was because I was a bad influence. But I think it was because that was the most painful thing his parents could do to course correct, to separate him from me. We didn't overthink it. And this is crazy, this is true. I don't know if Grady is his actual name. The reason I say that, I don't know if that was a nickname. To this day, I don't know if his real name was Graydon or Graybert or whatever variation of it could be. I have no idea. You know why? It didn't matter. It didn't matter. Now, some of you are like, well, if you had spent some time getting to know him. That wasn't the point. We were just having fun. Don't overthink it. Your parents were friends, you were related, they were a cousin, they lived next door, they were in the same grade at school. It was just a person in proximity to you, and that's Jesus' point. It's a person in proximity to you that you can have some kind of community with. And he gives us an example of someone helping this poor guy who's beaten up, left on the side of the road. Who's your neighbor? That guy in the ditch. That's your neighbor because you're walking by him. He's your neighbor. Don't overthink it. Jesus did not say, make sure your neighbor shares your opinions. Make sure your neighbor has the same demographic. Make sure you have a lot in common with your neighbor. He just said, be in community, be with people, help people. And I think this is what Jesus was getting at when he said, love your neighbor. Just be with people. You don't have to overthink it. Secondly, and I think if there's a secret to friendship or to belonging or to community, this is it. I think this is it. It's the surprising truth about loneliness and connection is that you have to be a participant, not a consumer. So I don't know if it's just because of our culture and the way that we're modeled, and we just want everything to be done for us and everything to be served to us on a platter, and we want to rate the level of service that we're getting by what kind of tip we give. I always, no matter what, I always tip on the little thing, even if I'm like, they didn't do anything for me, because I feel bad not tipping. But the point that I think Jesus is getting at, that you're supposed to be a participant in a relationship, not a consumer. And so many of us, the lie that gets in our thing, in our heads is this thing about, man, I've got to wait till they come to me. I got to wait till they do the thing. I've got to wait till they express some sort of desire to have a relationship with me. And our goal is not to wait for them, but to be a participant in a relationship, to step into some kind of relationship, to step into some kind of circumstance or environment that would put us in community with one another. I know there's not a whole commercial for this, but one way you can do that is you can sign up here at church to be a greeter at the front door, and you will always be paired with somebody else. And if you don't know that other person, there's a great opportunity to get to know them. And there's a great opportunity to get to know a bunch of people who are walking through the door, and you can say good morning and hi and how are you. You can get to know people by participating versus waiting for someone to come to you and make it happen. You get involved. There's small groups that we have. You get involved. There's a group of people going to Mexico this year, and we are going to go on a mission trip, and we are going to live together for a week with people that we don't normally live together with. And some of you are like, that sounds terrible and awful, but it is a great way to get to know somebody, to live with them, to be with them, to spend time with them, to participate in life. When you prioritize convenience over relationship, the result will always be loneliness. Convenience over relationship equals loneliness. And number 3, I've been saying it all along, number 3, just do the thing. Just do the thing. Invite them to coffee. Ask them to help you tear out your deck. Loneliness will say, oh, no, they're too busy for you. They don't want to help you with that stuff. They don't want to hang out. They don't want to spend time with you. And often, not always, but often, the other person on the end of that equation, it was like, man, I would love to spend time with someone. I would love to be with someone. I would love to help someone. I would love that opportunity. At least give them the opportunity to say, no, thank you. You may get some no's. But if you search for evidence that people don't like you, you're going to find it. But if you just put yourself out there, I know that's hard. Some of you are like, Patrick, you're an extrovert. Not always, sometimes, most of the time, but not always. If you just put yourself out there, if you send the text, if you say the thing, it's a common feeling to feel alone, but it is treatable. We're going to wrap up with a song called Gratitude. And I want, go ahead and stand if you would, as I invite the praise team to come up on stage and sing it as we close out. I think everything that we've got to realize and recognize is that everything we have, everything that we live, everything that we believe is something from God. God gives good gifts. God has created community for you. Don't let the lies in your brain keep you from it.